You got cast in two very high profile projects. Number one, Uncoupled on Netflix, starring Neil Patrick Harris. You have a supporting role, a show that I actually loved and binged like in 2 days while sitting in Provincetown. I loved this show. And of course, you were cast in Bros as Luke McFarlane's like very broy straight brother, which is like
This is a funny story. So the world reopens, and during the pandemic, I was just eating and drinking and not working out. I gained almost 40 pounds. So when I got my vaccine, I started going back to the gyms. At first, I auditioned to play Luke's role. Then in July, they said, we want to see you for Luke's brother. Please use the same broy accent. And I was like, what broy accent? How dare you? Anyway, I auditioned for it begrudgingly, and it was summer. My room was hot, couldn't have the AC on because of sound. And I was like watching my tape because I recorded my lines and then put in iMovie and then audio filed Luke's lines into it because I didn't have a reader. And I sent it in. And before I did, I watched it and I was like, this sucks. Like, this is such a good audition. And it sucks that Judd Apatow is going to look at this, research me, and be like, the dude from Queer Eye? No, because I did not know that the entire cast was going to be LGBTQIA. Didn't know that. So I send it in July. Forget it. And then I get the call that I book Bros. And I'm shocked. I pull over, I cry in my car because everything that people had told me my entire career had just been disproven. You're never going to play a straight leading man in a movie. And even though it's a supporting role, it's still a lead. I still am on a single title card with Bowen Yang.
I love
the end
that.
of the movie. And the reason why I say that is because it defeated old storylines that people had told me that had been a driving factor in my own inner saboteur voice.
What was that?
Which was, that the world would only ever see me as the guy from Queer Eye, that I would never be judged by the quality of my work, but I would be judged on how I presented myself on lives. Not that I didn't have the capacity to do the role, but that people would never look past the history of my work. And if I think about the early days, yes, I did Rent, but I also did, I did a play at Lincoln Center opposite Hope Davis, no music, about racism on a college campus and microaggressions in 2000 that got rave reviews, and I'm playing this inner city straight kid. So, I had, it's not like the first time I'd done it, but it was the first time I was attached to a project with people like Judd Apatow and Billy Eichner. And, I was auditioning while also doing Bros because I knew, all right, I'm literally shooting 7 days on this movie, 6 days, I can't remember. But I was in New York for 3 weeks, had a lot of downtime, and I auditioned for Uncoupled, my cell phone on a coffee table, which was on top of a trash can, which had a tissue box. And I was using natural light to self-tape this audition, same scenario, record the other lines on an iPad, film with an iPhone, have a scene with yourself, send it in. I get the call that I book one episode. I was like, great. And they're like, it shoots on your day off from Bros. I was like, amazing. They're like, we're only hiring New York actors. Great. I already have a hotel room. I'm already here. I finished Bros, about to shoot Uncoupled. They moved the dates. So I had to come back home and fly myself. And then they added 2 more episodes. So I did 3 total. And then I was all excited that I was on, in a Darren Star created Sex and the City on a Netflix show. Netflix cancels it in December. Showtime picks it up 2 weeks ago.
This is what I want to talk to you about. This is what I'm fascinated by. There's a lot here I want to unpack. I want to talk about the specific, what's going on now. I think it's because, first of all, there are too many streamers, and a lot of the streamers are now merging. There's a headline here: every LGBTQ show canceled over the past year, from Warrior Nun to Gossip Girl. The byline is 2.5 Men ran for 12 seasons and 262 episodes. Let that sink in for a second. Mm-hmm. Why is it that so many of these queer-centered TV shows are canceled after 1 or 2 seasons? Like A League of Their Own has yet to be picked up. I actually think,
I love that show.
My favorite show of the last year.
It was so good.
I think Showtime is going to pick it up along with Uncoupled, because I don't know if you read this article came out last Friday in Deadline, how Showtime with the Paramount merger, they're creating 3 streams of programming. One of those streams is basically queer content to go along with the L Word.
Get back to their queer as folk roots. Didn't they do queer as folk back in the day? Put them on the map.
Of course, and now they've rebooted the L Word, which has been airing for years. And so the whole thing is that people who watch the L Word, like myself, there's high churn because, well, what other no L Word fan wants to watch Dexter. Nobody gives a fuck like that. Like, it doesn't work that way. So they need to hold that audience year round. And I feel like if they take A League of Their Own and Uncoupled, all they need is like another.
So this is what I think about Uncoupled. You know, when you have the writer of Modern Family and Darren Star commenting on your supporting role, you're like, you feel like you're doing something right because there's no small roles. But talking about queer media being canceled all the time, look, I was at the beginning wave of queer media. It was Queer as Folk, L Word, a dating show called Boy Meets Boy, Will and Grace. It was very vanilla, basic queerdom, except Queer as Folk, which was really progressive in its sexuality. And the sex scenes looked a little bit more like sex for us. And when we talk about places like Showtime, my hope is that season 1, some of the critiques were, how did Neil's character not know what Grindr was? Like, certainly someone would have brought it up. How is he so clueless? I think that they'll shed a little bit of that in season 2 if I have to project. So it's really tricky. But I will say, I have high hopes for what they're going to do in season 2. I like to believe that people do kind of take a page from what folks are talking about and listen to, you know, critiques that kind of, oh, I see it. I see what they're saying, the fans. The second thing is they're in a new home. What if Showtime says, we want to see more from this storyline. We want Neil to fall in love with this. We don't know, you know, so we really have no idea. I will say the minute I found out, I was like, if they shoot oh no, we're going to be in Speedos. Like, I was like immediately going to like.
Well, yeah. Do you know when they start filming season 2?
They have not said, and I tried to be a little sneaky birdie, and well, not that sneaky. We just, my agent called casting, who lets us know when I'm shooting again, because they have to cast all the episodes. And once they do, and you know, like if it's my character coming back, it isn't the production company, it's casting that would call and say, hey, they're going to use Jay again next week or whatever it is.
Here's the thing. I mean, this show is beautifully shot in New York City, and we're coming upon, I mean, right now, you know, it's the middle of winter, but I'm presuming they're going to do the whole Hamptons, Fire Island, Provincetown thing. Like, they have to.
That was the joke on set.
1 + 1 = 2. Like, this doesn't take.
The wedding was in Brooklyn at the Boathouse, and it was no heat. And we were freezing, dead of winter. It had to have been like 14 degrees outside, ice everywhere. And I remember Tisha was like, they better do a Hot Boy Summer next season. Like, you know, and so she's down for it. I will say, one of the most interesting things about working on this show and working on Bros, I work with 2 out gay leading men who were not just the stars, but Billy Eichner and Neil Patrick Harris were both executive producers, meaning I couldn't really like kiki with them because they didn't really have downtime. Like, everyone was asking, they had input in everything, and they had to wear many hats. Whereas when I did like How I Met Your Mother, I felt like we could be a little more palsy. I don't think he was a producer on that. Maybe he was, but it's a different experience and a lot more pressure. And I'm really happy that they fought for this show because I think it has a lot of potential. Obviously, selfishly, I would love to be back and to have something substantial to do. But even if I'm not back, I'm still going to watch as a fan.
So walk me through this. How does a show? Okay, so I'm so happy that Uncoupled found a new home, but like we just mentioned, A League of Their Own. So I'm sitting here a fan of A League of Their Own, and I'm just fascinated by how like a show gets canceled at one. I mean, I'm not thinking of Netflix as a network. I mean, what did we call it? A production company?
I mean, a streaming service, I guess, but they do tend, when there was a shift, and I don't know if you remember when it was, maybe it caught your eye too. There was a shift when streaming started winning more awards than networks. Emmys, Golden Globes, and all of a sudden networks, ABC, NBC, Fox, CBS, were like, because
it was when Orange is the New Black and House of Cards, because those were the first 2 Netflix
So once
shows.
they started proving we're more than just a casual streaming site, and if you noticed, with that came the introduction to movie stars allowing themselves to do streaming television. When you're on set, it don't feel any different. A movie set and a TV set, pending budget, feels exactly the same. So you're like, it's weird. And the reason why I bring that up is because TV work was considered of a lower caliber than film work.
Right.
But suddenly you have Reese Witherspoon, Nicole Kidman, Meryl Streep, all these legitimate bona fide movie stars doing television, sort of breaking that myth that you can't do both, which is magical. But going back to the point about the Netflix and what happens with these shows.
Yeah, like the question is really, what are the factors, what are the deciding factors where a streamer, we'll just call it a streamer, is going to cancel a show? And then
I think it's streams and like what their current okay, so, and again, I'm speculating, I don't know this as fact, but if I had to guess, I would say it's hours streamed, which makes no sense because the Uncoupled was like incredibly highly streamed, especially its first week. But number of streams, what they want to release when, and does it coincide with other programming, and what direction are they taking their platform? They're also, if and when there's interest from other places. When I did Malibu Country, was this to come on ABC with Reba and everything, Reba and Lily Talman. When we got canceled, the producers were like, oh, just canceled at ABC. We're going to still shop it around. Sit tight, everybody. Don't panic yet. It's not over. And I remember when I ran into one of the cast members of Uncoupled like a month ago, and he was like, it's not over. And I was like, what? Because I heard it was canceled. And he's like, there's some talks about a network looking into this. And I was like, okay. I mean, it still doesn't affect me because I won't know until like weeks before they start shooting, which is allegedly speculated to be late spring. And I was like, so wait, so what's the deal? And he was like, well, when Netflix or a home that has a show is like, it's fine, but we think we want to do more of X. Then they release the show, especially if it's good. They're like, we don't got to worry about that. Somebody going to pick it up. And they almost do it with their blessing. Another thing to consider, which we haven't talked about, but happens, a showrunner, a creator, a writer might say, after seeing season 1, we want to take the show in this direction. Or a Netflix or the home of any show might say, listen, about your season 1, this is what we think. And the creator might be like, yeah, I'm not doing that. So there might be creative differences that lead to a separation too, that have nothing to do about streaming, commercial ad sales, none of that. Anyway, once those factors are in place and you do get just dropped or just not renewed, the production company who makes the show, they take it out like they're taking it out again, but now they have 8 episodes to show off. And they try to broker a couple of things that come into play. How much does this show cost per episode? How much am I going to have to pay to make your show? So that's something to consider, right? Because they have a cast, they were somewhere else, but they have contracts. And if those contracts are to be honored and not necessarily renegotiated for more, you got to like hold on to those kids. So I think what ended up happening was maybe creative differences, maybe Netflix took their thing in a different direction, but Showtime to me, based on what we're talking about, is the right home. And if they bring a league of their own onto Showtime, aka Paramount Plus, then they could honestly start rebranding themselves as a good place for queer people to go. Now, queer people also like shows like White Lotus, like Wednesday, that have a little touch of queerness to it, but we don't always want to see just queer storylines as well. So it's more like queer friendly content because, even projects like Bros, some folks immediately felt like, I don't see myself represented. I'm not into it. And then I watched the movie and thought it was exceptional writing. I belly laughed a lot, but it was an opus. It was Billy Eichner's sort of opus to his lived experience. And once I knew that, once I've met him and know he is nothing like Billy on the street, I really fell in love with the piece. And I got to work with him, but we're not like besties. I don't have the guy's number. I wish I did. I would like to have been friends with him. Anyone who's out and queer in Hollywood, I wish I were closer to some of these people, but the people that have like kind of brought me in are more like the people who have been really warm are like Joel Kim, um, like the Fire Island cast, to be honest, like at the new school of queer kids.
Yeah.
Um, and just like Bowen Yang, when I worked with him on Nora from Queens, I have 2 episodes that'll be coming out this year. I shot that in the fall. The manner in which they speak to you is with and I'm using this word politely and softly, but with a reverence for the trail you blazed. Contemporaries don't really treat you like that. Queer ones, like, it's like everybody's kind of, it's like a soft competition.
Yeah.
But I don't see it as such because I feel like Billy did the right thing. They asked him, who do you want to play these supporting roles? We want to get names, movie stars, like for my role and everything. And he said, I don't want that. I want legitimately qualified actors who just need their shot. And when they did a promo reel going through every celebrity cameo, all these leads, when he got to me, he said, Jay just auditioned really well. We saw a lot of people, and I don't even think Nick knew, the director, who Jay was, so that he was from Queer Eye, and we were like, why not? And in the movie, they talk about, we never celebrate when queer men who are fabulous play butch, but we certainly celebrate when straight butch men play fabulous. And there isn't, the narrative on social media about some of these projects was a lack of diversity. And I was like, hi, I was in both. I'm Puerto Rican from New York, and I've had a real hard time in Hollywood. So maybe we can highlight what is there and support those actors who had supporting roles enough so there's a bit of a public demand for them to be in leading roles. Because without it, you keep the narrative going about one person, they're going to keep hiring them, even if you're talking good or bad.
This brings up a really interesting point that I wanted to get your take on. It seems like gay men are so cruel toward content that is centered on themselves. Fire Island was revered because it was a cast entirely, for the most part, people of color. And so I think people saw themselves for the first time. Other projects
that was my Fire Island experience. I was Bowen Yang. I mean, I was the Joel Kim. I mean, Joel Kim, he's also like super ripped and hot, but like there is something very true to the old, which you don't see as much because I don't think they allow it, but on dating apps, people used to say, fats, no femmes, no Asians. Mm-hmm. I mean, just they put it out there. I mean, I've reached out to people and they've said, sorry, I don't do rice and beans. So the racial slurs, the queer community, the gay community, I'll start there. The gay community that has had the will and grace representation in all different forms for years I've done so many projects where, it's always a handsome white guy as the number one on the call sheet for this queer indie project. I've done, so many of them. It's the same story. So when I saw Fire Island and I saw their experience, a lot of my friends who are more of the traditional cis white gay men were like, I don't get it. I'm like, I know, but look how beautiful. We get to have a conversation where I get to share that movie was my experience when we went to Fire Island that time. You didn't say anything. I know. What do you want me to say? Like, it was awkward, and then we needed art to reflect the human experience that isn't our own for us to learn from it. And so you're right. I don't know why gay men are so critical, but I will say sometimes it's a bunch of things. I don't see myself, my inner homophobia. I don't want the jack. Give me more of the will, because the will is going to not make my parents uncomfortable. It's not going to make me have to explain. I don't want people to think I'm fabulous. Whatever it is, because, in this day and age, the funny thing is you might have parents who you come out of the closet and you happen to be very butch and inclined to do things like sports or repair things. And they're like, no, I wanted a drag queen. Like, in this day and age, you might have more open-minded parents, but I will say this boils down to the lack of empathy within our marginalized community.